But he was telling me about all the lingo they use over there, and I guess buku's big over there.
Oh, okay.
Like, you're charging buku.
Yeah.
You're charging a lot.
Yeah,
like,
that's
like
interesting.
buku bucks.
Yeah. That's what I said, and he was like, yeah, kinda. And I was like, no, exactly.
Hello, and welcome to the intro before the intro
Of the Up and Coming Artist Podcast.
It's our new section.
I'm Ben, an animator.
And I'm Christian, a photographer.
And we will get into talking about the artist who we have on today, who is Dash Najarian, in a second. But before that, we got some plugs.
Plugs.
So do stick around, because Dash is a great story artist, illustrator, and movie buff, as we found out in this episode. Okay, so February 23rd, the Ground Zero Animation Expo's groundbreaking pop-up. And it's very exciting. You want to know why, Christian?
Why? Tell me why.
They probably don't even know about this podcast, but listen to their description of themselves. Featuring, this is for the pop-up, featuring 20 plus up and coming vendors who are trying to break into the industry for animation, stop motion, because I guess those are different apparently, gaming, and more. And I was like, wow, can we get any more perfect for this podcast?
It's like they were made for us.
I went to a lot of art events last year, and by far the highlight was Ground Zero's Animation Expo. So this is one of their big events. They do a handful a year. This is their pop-up. Their full event will be in June, and you can check out their website, which is gzaexpo.com, which stands for Ground Zero Animation Expo. And also their Instagram, which is the same thing, gzaexpo on Instagram.
If you guys really care about supporting artists, trying to help others build a career, to make great art that you're going to be able to enjoy in your favorite shows and movies and games in the future, we highly suggest that you spend a little time there, get to know some people.
And you know the best part of this event?
What is the best part of this event?
It's free.
What?
I know. All these great artists, including some we've had on the podcast. Napoleon Chavez back in episode 7, and a guy whose episode hasn't come out yet, Jake Lemke, is going to be there. So, spoiler for upcoming podcasts coming out.
So we have a little game for you guys. A little needle in the haystack. You got to go find them. You got to go say hi to them. And you got to let them know how amazing they are.
And, while you're at it, buy some of their art.
Tell them that we sent you.
But seriously, we're not getting any kickback from this. I am only bringing this up because of how much I enjoy this event. It's a great event. On that same day, they'll have talks on 3D modeling, plein air, which is, painting outdoors, pitch packets if you want to make your own show, learn how to do it, stop motion fabrication, which is near and dear to my heart, which leads me to my next little plug. For me.
So you guys don't know this, but Ben has been working on a project for a long time behind the scenes, and he has exciting news about
my mini series is coming out. It's a series I created myself while I was an intern at Stupid Buddy. They encouraged me to develop it there, so I was able to do that. I made puppets, I got it all together, animated it digitally, and now it is finally coming out this Saturday, February 16th, the first 2 episodes.
And then there will be an episode a week subsequently after that for the next 5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah.
Crazy.
So it's 5 weeks, 6 episodes starting this week. And if you want to check those out, those won't be on my Instagram. They'll be on Toon Therapies, which, as a plug for our podcast, as also a part of Toon Therapy is Joel Zamudio back in episode 5 and Cassidy Blake Christo, episode 12. So give those a listen.
There's exciting stuff happening on the internet. Won't you be our internet neighbor?
And join us for this exciting interview with Dash Najarian.
Hello, and welcome back to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. I'm Christian, a photographer.
And I'm Ben, an animator. So, Christian, the last time we heard from you, we were talking about your crazy proposal story.
That is right. I have been wedding planning for the last couple weeks, and I'm very excited about it. We're going to have another addition to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast family.
Yes, that is our last name, yeah. Well, with that intro, over, I think we should bring in our guest.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because I got nothing else to say about that. So, the guest that we have on tonight is a fantastic storyboard artist, storyteller, illustrator, and anything else he wants to describe himself as, I will leave it up to him. And that is my friend Dash, and I don't know his last how
Nigerian words.
Nigerian. I always forget to ask people before we start recording. Nigerian.
Do you want to say Dash Nigerian so you could like sub it
Edit
in later?
it.
Oh
Yeah. And that is my friend Dash Nigerian.
There you go.
That was a really good pronunciation. With the first try.
Dash, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. You were one of the first people who was interested in the podcast, so thank you.
Oh yeah, seriously, it's just interesting because like a lot of my friends have been on it and stuff like that, and I love podcasts.
That's awesome.
I'm
man.
a little nervous if I'm being honest.
Oh no, dude, it's all good. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
I said that you do storyboarding, that you do storytelling, you do illustration, which is kind of what I first saw from you. But how else would you describe like your art?
I feel like with one image or a sequence of images to try and describe a story. So like in one way or another form of like telling a narrative, I feel like is kind of like my goal in something, even if it's just like an ink drawing or like a watercolor or something. Like I always, and like even when I'm doing like a landscape painting or a drawing, I tend to like try and tell like the essence of that area. So like kind of focusing more on like the meaning of something rather than like the thing itself. I guess is like something I'm trying to focus on. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Yeah, I would say that's super clear in your work too, and we'll get into this later on. But the kind of imagery that you pull from, and like even the elk thing, like you as on your social media, your spirit animals and elks.
That started as like a joke between friends, and then it kind of just like one guy came up to me and was like, "Elk man," and I was like, "Yeah."
Became like your calling card.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, does that have to do with like Norse mythology, or was that just something you just joke around with friends?
Well, I don't know where it started, but the idea of a spirit animal has always been really interesting to me, almost like the totem. Like, and I was really into elephants when I was a kid, but then there was something about like deer and stuff like that, and then I was focusing a lot on thinking about what stuff like would like represent me in like a profile picture and stuff like that. Like something that's always like really inspired me was like just like the idea of like an elk. Like they're big, they're loud, they probably could beat someone up, but they won't. Like that. I feel like describes me pretty well. Like they got some extra hair lying around.
You got the beard now, though.
Well, yeah, and thank you so much. Yeah, well, because you've always got like, first of all, Ben, you're like the only person I know that could pull off mutton chops. like everyone else, I'm like, shave it off, man. You gotta go. But
yeah, that's kind of you. I'm sure I should probably shave mine off.
Yeah, so I was just going back to the idea of you drawing spirit animals. I was looking over your Instagram. I saw you also drew some of your friends as like their spirit animal.
Oh yeah.
You get a lot of people asking you to do that.
You always get people asking you to draw you, and that just has always been funny. Well, because I don't know if you know this, and this is going to come up eventually, but both my parents are artists too, and they both teach at Cerritos College and at Long Beach State and places like that all around.
So you went to Fullerton to just get away from it.
It's like, guys, bye.
Was that like a really, really awkward conversation? Like,
no,
hey, sorry.
I applied to Long Beach, but didn't get in. And I think it's because of how impacted it was that year, or they didn't, or like they were physically like, no, like don't, like my parents were like, don't let him in. He's not good. He doesn't clean his room. Get out. So, but my parents would always tell me like weird stories about like how they'd be like, hey, can you draw me as like a football player or something? And I guess my dad drew like this guy as the football player in high school, but he like drew him like flipping off like the audience and stuff like that. Like, and the dude would like flip out or something like that. But it was just like, anytime someone asks me to draw them, I'm always like, if I ever get around to it, it's not going to be what you think it's going to be.
Yeah. Do they choose their own spirit animal, or is that something you were talking about meaning earlier that you kind of find for them?
This starts to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't. but
I'll cut that out. Just be like, you do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Like, people confuse, like, favorite animals with spirit animals. Like, my favorite animal is, like, a mountain bongo, which is, like, this giant antelope, but which is super dope. But they're in, like... Because you aren't, like, do you know how pretentious it'd be if you're like, well, I love dragons, so I'm a dragon.
Yeah.
So it's like, kind of like, like, what are you trying to say,
This is
man?
a terrible personality test, yeah.
I didn't choose the dragon life. The dragon life chose me.
So I tend to, like, a lot, and we all act differently around different people, even if we don't realize it. So usually I try and base it off of, like, my interactions with them, like my friend Parker. Shout out to Parker if you're listening.
Shout out.
Shout out. Peachy P on Instagram, follow her, she's great. She, like, I always joke she's a cat because she's like pretends like she doesn't care, but she cares a lot. Like that kind of mentality. She, like, I told her that and she was like, yeah.
And you're like, you just proved it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you think a lot about the essence of people. And where did that concept come from? Like, what influenced you into art? Was it your parents, or were there other influences?
You know, that's something I've been thinking about my whole life. I just always drew. Like, I actually started with, like, the whole silly putty Play-Doh type of thing, because I just, like, sculpting as a kid was just so much more interesting to me than, I mean, you drew too, but every kid drew. So it was just interesting. Like, I don't know, like, because I think, obviously, having parents and having that around you and having that as a part of your life kind of influences you. And so it's hard to say, but I guess from my perspective, I just always drew because it was fun.
Yeah.
Or I always practiced my craft because it was fun, and it always, like, kind of, like, freaks me out when people are like, oh, I want to be an artist because that's, like, because this person's an artist or something like that. And I'm like, no, you animate because you want to animate. You storyboard because you want photography because you want to photograph.
Photographize. Yeah.
I didn't choose the photography line.
But one thing I don't think you mentioned yet is, what art do your parents do? Do they have a specialty?
Oh, so my dad, they're both teachers, so they both teach, like, painting, drawings, life drawing, stuff like that. But my dad focuses a lot on abstract surrealists. Like, it's a lot more with color shapes and color theory. Like, if you look at them, like, they're like big blotches of color. But it's really interesting because I never really thought about it, because he's been doing that style for like 2 years now, and he's out in his studio just kind of doing his thing. But I remember I went out to his studio one day and I was like, what are these? And he's like, well, they're actually based off, like, music I listen to, because every time you go out to my dad's studio, it's a mixture of
smell.
Yeah, terpenoid, like, cigar smoke and jazz, hard jazz music just coming in your face, or reggae or something, or some Clash and stuff like that. So it's just so you get, like, this just punch in the face of, like, culture. And then I was like, what's this one? He's like, well, this one's like this song by Tchaikovsky or something like that. And he's like, see, that's like that weird shape right there is like the bass line, that's the trumpet, that's the cello. And it's just like, whoa. Like, it went from them looking like just paintings to being like, hey, like, they make sense to me. Mm-hmm. And then my mom does, like, she used to do, like, super, like, hyper realistic like ink drawings of, like, olive trees, because in La Mirada there's a lot of olive trees around. Mm-hmm. So she would go around and photographize them.
I love that.
Oh, my gosh.
Hashtag photographize.
Yeah. I got a photography that tree.
I'm a major in photographizing. But now she's going more into painting and watercolor, and she was always into that, but that's more of, like, she's kind of dropped the whole ink thing. And so she focuses more on, there's still, like, that impressionistic thing, like, mm-hmm. you can see the paint strokes, like, it's not so realistic that it's like that, but it's a lot more focusing on that. In fact, she also went through like a cool phase where through newspaper articles of like the Trump administration and stuff like that, she like wound them up and turned them into weeds. and which is like, it's kind of like says something, but she also did this big series of painting weeds, like these super intense, like with big blocks of dirt in it and stuff like that, kind of, because she's also really into gardening. So
cool.
It's interesting seeing like my dad's and mom's passions flowing into their artwork.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love gardening. Gardening is great.
Oh, there you go.
That's all I was going to say. Just if you want to
Yeah, you can't see our yard because it's dark. For those listening, it's all dark outside.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We're recording this in complete, utter darkness.
Yeah, we can't even see Dash or his art. We're assuming it's him, but...
Lebanon and Pryor.
Yeah.
It's a big, loud voice.
Yeah.
When we hear his voice...
But you mentioned my beard earlier, so we can hear the beard.
Yeah.
It's there.
Oh, good point. Touche. But
But
one thing I was going to say about your parents' influence, and I don't know if this is necessarily true of your work or not, but to me it seems like it is. Because when I look at your work, it's really representational, but then also you have this kind of abstract side to it, almost like there's a mythology or like, I'm trying to think of the word, but there's like an abstract element to it, which I think is cool. At least in that conversation that we just had so far, it's kind of like I could kind of see maybe influence from both of your parents coming into your work. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's something I think about too. I remember my mom like would always complain about me having. I went through like the anime style phase, but she like bought me like my first manga book. So I'm like, you created this, like you can't make fun of me.
That's actually leading into my next question, which was, so then when did that, doing that silly putty sculpture / drawing when you were a kid kind of become something like, hey, this is something I want to pursue?
I remember having like a phase in 5th grade where I was really wanting to make movies. And I'm still towards that. Like I'm a film minor too. And that's a big inspiration for me is film. So I remember like making stuff that was kind of like low-key rip-offs of movies I'd seen. Like, I made this, like, in-depth, low-key Lord of the Rings rip-off. High-key Lord of the Rings rip-off. And it's so, like, there's no way it's not a Lord of the Rings ripoff, but I swear, like, it was original at the time when I was, like, 10.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous. Like, the main dude's name is, like, a wizard, and he looks like Gandalf, and his name's, like, Ragadolf. Like, I'm not messing around. And it's just, like, the wildest thing.
That's amazing. Did you film yourself, or how did you do that?
No, it's not it was, like, character designs and stuff.
Oh, okay, got
in,
it.
like, my sketchbook at the time. Oh, no, that'd be weird. Filming myself as a wizard when I was
like,
10.
hey, you already have the beard. You're already there, Ragnarok.
Yeah. When I was 10. Come on, Ben. Yeah, but so yeah, movies always inspired me. So that kind of like, I was kind of inspired to make them. I was really into Godzilla as a kid, and then I kind of went from there to like, then I went into the whole manga thing, and then I was really into. And then middle school was kind of like the whole, oh, this is fun, and then from there, like, high school was kind of more of a, alright, well, I should probably take this seriously, because it kind of, high school is like the time when you start comparing yourself to professionals and stuff like that, or at least I did. Like, I was like, whoa, look at Masashi Kishimoto, look what he's doing, I should probably think about going there, because up to that point, at least for me, I was kind of just copying, like, if I saw, like, in my mind, if I copied, like, that manga panel perfectly, I was as good as that guy. Like, that's kind of like the way you connect it as a kid. And so it was just kind of like seamless. Like, it kind of just happened over like a long period of time. But I never really doubted. There was like a brief time in high school when because I really get along with kids. I really wanted to become a pediatric nurse. Or like a teacher or something. But I always more or less stuck on that pathway of wanting to do art.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And now thinking about your manga influence, this is something I want to get into maybe throughout the podcast. And obviously influence from your mom too, doing ink. But I notice a lot of physical media in your work, like on Instagram. Like you see some people's Instagram, mine, it's all digital.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look at yours, which is so great, and it's primarily in just thinking about manga, ink.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what got you into working with ink? Was it your mom, or when did that come in?
I just never liked digital. I tried digital in towards like the end of high school. Like I was kind of sketching on Photoshop and stuff like that, and I knew professionals were doing it, but it was just never. And even to this day, like there's times when I do digital, but it's really just out of convenience sake. Like when I know I'm going to be doing like a lot of copying and pasting. Mm-hmm. But there's just nothing that beats that feeling of pencil on paper.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like your parents influenced that in you because they worked with physical mediums?
Probably because you just like, well, this is art. Like what they're doing is art.
Yeah.
So what's that on the computer? That's not art. Like obviously that's not true.
Yeah.
But when you're growing up and from this small perception as a kid, that's what you just. That's I guess it probably had some view on it that way.
Yeah, well then my follow-up question to that is, if you don't feel like it was necessarily your parents, do you feel like you at some point took that ownership of making that conscious decision that you would prefer to work with a physical medium than a digital medium?
Yeah, because the only reason I don't like traditional is it's such a pain to get a picture of your work that looks right. Yeah. And then you never like it. Like it never looks the same. Like and it like there's always some way it's different. So that's really like, I don't know. I guess it never really even like occurred to me like, oh, maybe I should do digital. But until like college when I was like, okay, well I have to do it now.
Yeah.
You need to at least know it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and that's what I actually think is like super cool about your work, because to me, and it's just like what you're saying, there's something that you just can't get with digital. Like the tools are great, but nothing beats that pen on paper. So that's one thing I wanted to ask you about is what are some of your favorite medias?
Well, I've come to notice the thing I really like is when something's raw. Mm-hmm. Like when it's like even when it's like B footage or like B rolls on film, like when it's still raw, like uncut a little bit, like when there's obviously mistakes here and there. That's why I love Mike Mignola. Shout out! He's so raw. Like he's just literally like you feel like he's just putting down shapes. He's literally just like like, oh yeah, I'm inking. If it looks a little funky, like that's just my style, but it works. Mm-hmm. So ink is fun because it's just like once it's there, it's there. Can't do anything about it. If you can fix it, but like you gotta roll with it.
Yeah.
But I really like graphite just because a lot of times I don't erase, so it's a lot of just layering. And I'll erase away, but I won't like erase away like my baselines usually. Mm-hmm. I love when I look at a drawing and I can see all the steps the artist took to get there. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to me. Like it's like, oh, you like did that? Like that's insane. It's so cool to me, and I think that's why I've always liked storyboards and like that whole more rougher side of art a little bit more. Like I always like sketches more than paintings. Like I always like this more than that. Like, and so I think that's why when you do something digitally and you know you can fix every problem with like the snap of your finger, like the click of a button, that since that pressure is there, you're like, well, it's got to be perfect. So that's why I feel like when there is problems in traditional work, it's more acceptable. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but my favorite medium for storyboarding I really like is just graphite. And to actually use Copic marker. So if anyone uses graphite, or try throwing Copic marker in there because it actually like dissolves the graphite. It's very interesting. Like mainly for storyboarding, I'll just draw out the panel like just freehand, and then I'll draw in my values. Or I'll do like the first like initial roughs in like colored blue pencil or orange or whatever color, like something bright so you can see it. And then I put in my values and then I go over with pencil to look for like the final things. But then you scan it in black and white, the blue and orange like disappears.
Yeah.
And so it just helps a lot. And then if you want to throw color on, like do that all in Procreate or Photoshop.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I was going to ask about, because we were talking about at the beginning how you know, you had your parents, you had movies, manga influencing you in wanting to tell stories. So when did storyboarding come into the mix with your art?
It had become apparent to me that comic artists don't make any money.
We love you guys, but yeah.
Well, no, it's don't get me wrong. I wish they did.
Yeah.
I'm not trash talking them. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But I would love to do them at some point. But it's I also want to own a family. I want to have a family. So around that time of noticing like comic artists didn't really know what they were doing, I got kind of into character design a little bit, but I was mainly more just like drawing to draw. And then I really liked the idea of films, and I've always loved films. And then my friend, shout out to Memo.
Shout out!
Ulysses the Great on Instagram. He needed help making a logo of his for his film that he was making, because his brother had recently passed away, and he was making a film to like commemorate him. Long story short, he made like a short film that's 40 minutes long. And then, but he showed it to his editor, and then the editor was like, "Oh, you got like the makings for like a full-fledged movie here." And then he was like, "Oh, like kind of a little bit like I just wanted to be done with it."
Yeah.
But because it originally was just like a mourning process type of thing.
Yeah.
But then, so he sat down other people and like showed them the short, and was like, "Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to be part of this? I can't afford to pay you, but this is like, if you want to be part of it, like I would really appreciate it." Essentially, so I met up with him. I saw the short film, and it's great. It's super emotionally heavy, and just feels like there's like a lot of soul in it, and it's got that rawness that I really like to this film. And the film's called Four Cities. But long story short, he asked me to make the logo for it. And then he was like, "Oh, I also need a storyboard artist, and I don't, and was that something you can do?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I went home and looked up what storyboarding was.
Yeah. Good job.
And I was kind of familiar, like I kind of knew, and was like, I knew there was some form of drawing before they got out the camera. But, and then I did some for him. He handed me the script. I did some for him, and then he really liked them. And then kind of went from there. I did more and more, and then I got the opportunity. I got a priceless opportunity where I saw my drawings move when I was on set when they were filming it. And it was this super. I almost started crying. It was this super intense experience, but super great. So it was just me on set for like 4 days. With school and work, but I couldn't complain because the guy Memo was I think he went like a week without sleep. Like he's the director, main actor in the film. Like he's plugging away, and so I see what he's doing. And I'm like, gotta stomach it, can't I can't complain. But anyway, so it was essentially like him pulling in favors, and he ended up getting like 500 people on this set. Like it's a big thing. Like when they're like, "What's it called?" And I'm like, "Oh, you probably wouldn't heard of it, but it's called Four Cities." Like they're editing it right now. When I say they're editing it, I mean he and like one other person are editing it.
Wow.
Like they're plugging along. They're great. But yeah, so that kind of opened my mind, and then I was kind of like, whoa, like if this is what I want to do, like I kind of got a sense for the technical skills I had to do. So I got really into life drawing and just understanding how people move and stuff like that. And then I kind of got really into it. I want to say like when I took pre-production, I got really back into the actual storyboarding of it. And then that was a year ago. And then around that time, I just started storyboarding for fun. And then I got a couple people that were like, "Hey, you want to do this? Do you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then over the course of this last semester, I actually got a handful of paid freelancing jobs storyboarding, and that was really exciting.
That's awesome. For live action or for animation?
For live action, there was one for animation, but it was so like. It was so minor, like it's not even worth like resume showing. But but dude, oh my gosh! While we're on the topic, I can't animate to save my life, Ben. How do you do that?
Well, we might as well get to it now. Yeah. You mentioned pre-production, and when we last talked, which was way too long ago, I blame myself. You were working on that film, and so could you talk about that film that you made in your pre-production and production classes?
I hate animating. No, it's great. I just like the immediacy of storyboarding. Mm-hmm. Like it's like animation. It's like a week, and you're like, check out this 3-second thing I made.
Yeah,
and it's like it's all power to those that can do it. I have so much respect for that craft. But storyboarding is like you want to comp, but that's what it is. Like, you want a thing, that's what it is. Like, I can do it in 5 minutes. I can do it in 10 minutes. It's just so quick and fast, which I really enjoy. That's another thing I like about traditional is you got, like, here's a pencil and paper. I gotta boot up Photoshop. And then well, the film, if that's what you're asking, the film is about, it's called Atlas. It's this film about like this barren world that's kind of floating through space. It's like a planet, and then this giant crawls out of it, and the giant kind of like realizes that the world's dead, and he starts like punching it and breaking it, ripping it apart, and essentially destroying himself to give the world life again. And like every time his arm breaks off, like the blood from his wound like either creates trees or turns into animals, like it's creating life. So it's this kind of abstract-ish thing, but it was like a passion project kind of. I just like it when stuff's over the top. Like, I love Gurren Lagann, if you've seen it. Like, it's so, like, I just love stuff that's over the top. Like, you didn't need to go there, but you did.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. And then people were like, what's the meaning? And I kind of said, like, oh, it's kind of about the artistic struggle and stuff like that, but that's kind of BS. Like, I kind of just...
You're like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I was like, I think it's cool. I don't think I have to explain what it means. I think that it's kind of on the nose what it means. Like, it's that whole idea of life comes from death and stuff like that. But it was just also... that class just taught me a lot. But I'm happy I took production, but it was... Ooh.
Yeah.
For those that don't go to Cal State Fullerton or aren't familiar with the animation process, you make like the storyboards and like the character designs in your pre-production class, and then production, you're animating the film. You essentially storyboarded out.
So you had a lot of fun in the first class.
Oh, I had so much fun. That's like...
Gandorf or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't remember exactly
It's
what
okay,
it was bragging off.
Yeah. I'm happy I took it, but because I learned a lot, and I'm totally like, I love doing other art forms. Like I took glass blowing at school.
Awesome! With Tien?
What?
Was Tien in there?
Yeah, that's how I met Tien. Actually,
yeah.
Shout out to Tien. Woo, shout out.
Yeah. I'm glad you're picking up on that.
Yeah. I thought it was like a cute thing at first, and I'm like, I think this is a podcast thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Well, that's awesome, man. And I think that's cool, too. You were talking about earlier all the medias that your parents work in, all the media that you've tried, and then, you know, what you found works for you with storyboarding. So I think that's awesome that you were pushing yourself to animate, which really... To put it bluntly, and I love animation, but it isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
And glass blowing isn't, you know, for me. I love animation. You know, Tien does glass blowing and animation. That's his thing. And I think it's cool that you're constantly pushing yourself to make your art better. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a question about that too, because it sounds like you're willing to try things, but every one you've talked about, you seem to be touching on almost the idea of the storytelling process.
Absolutely.
The creation of storytelling. So would you say that at the heart of everything you do is telling stories?
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what your life is? I don't know. Oh, dang. That totally turned into like, what about you? Isn't that what your life is about? You're asking me all these questions. What about you? I think that's like the whole point of life, I feel like, is just trying to tell your own story. And that's why I love movies, is you're just trying to tell this story, and you're either sold on it or you're not.
Yeah.
So I know that I actually went through a little bit of film school as well, and I changed my major. But yeah, like I feel like there's a lot of people who go into film thinking it's cool. You know what I mean? But not necessarily thinking it in the sense of like you're telling a story. So to you, what do you... And this is going to sound like a really loaded question. Answer it however you feel. But like, to you, what is storytelling? Is it as simple as like, hey, guy met girl, but something got in the way.
The end.
The end, essentially.
I'm just kidding.
Or is there something more to it? Is it about reaching into something deeper in yourself?
I think the best stories are ones that exist on a basic level and on like a deeper level. That sounds really obvious. But like on like something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the reason why it's so good is because it's so basic. Obviously, there's a lot to that show, and there's like a lot of themes that like Uncle Iroh and Zuko. You could do like a whole show just on them, and I love it. It's my favorite show. But it's like if you break it down, it's this kid that has to beat this man, and it's about growth. He starts as an immature kid, and he has to learn about if he has to kill somebody. Like, oh my gosh, for a kid's show, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Like, and they do it in such a way that's so, like, simple. And while that's a little bit different, because it's not a movie. The good one isn't a movie. Like, I'm trying to think about, like, another movie. Oh, like, Iron Giant is my favorite movie of all time. Iron Giant is so good because of how simple it is. Boy met a robot. Like, go. Like, but there's like themes of I just when I rewatched it recently, I totally didn't. The first time I watched it as a kid, I totally didn't pick up on the whole like Soviet fear and stuff like that. Like, they're all thinking it's Sputnik and stuff like that. That's like their biggest fears. They're like, what if it's the Russians? Like, and they straight up say it like 3 times, but like. When you establish it as a kid what the movie is, and then when you actually start re-listening, when you're like now, you're like, whoa! Like, I love when really intense stuff happens in the background, like of like a simpler story. It's always really interesting to me.
Yeah, so, like the subtext, right? Like the subtext of that movie is like, what if a gun like chooses not to be a gun or learns not to be
But one thing I don't want to walk away from too soon is you have a separate Instagram that is just for your film reviews.
So sweet.
Thank you. So everyone check that out. And what's the name of that one again?
It's Elkboy_cinemas.
There you go. Yeah,
Elkboy coming back.
Yeah, I tried just doing Elkboy and some took it. I was like, no. I don't know who you are.
So when did that come in? Because you've always loved movies. So when you like, film reviews?
I was writing them a lot on Facebook. And then I started to realize I was probably annoying a lot of people. So I should probably make it optional to see those. So then, and I just wanted a place to I don't really care how many people follow it. It's nice when I get a couple people following it. Because the art one is like pretty pictures, like stuff like that. You know me, like you're just gonna follow that one. But like film reviews is like, wow, you actually care about what I have to say. Like that's pretty like endearing. But like that's just a place I kind of have to vent about things. So I find it really refreshing to just be like, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about this. I'm gonna write a review of Bumblebee. It's just kind of like a cool like escape from it, you know. Ever since MoviePass, I've gone to the movies a lot before that, but ever since MoviePass and now AMC MoviePass, I try to go to the movies like twice a week.
Okay.
Try. And I was kind of on that for a little bit. Like when Mid-90s came out, I think I saw that. I might have seen that 3 times. I think I saw it twice. And if you haven't seen Mid-90s, you have to see Mid-90s.
Oh, yeah, that's, which comedian is that who made that
Jonah
movie?
Hill.
Yeah, Jonah Hill, yeah.
Yeah, that's, oh my gosh, that's like the most real movie I've ever seen. It's so real, because I don't know if have you guys seen it?
No, not yet,
okay.
No.
But it, like, the whole thing is Jonah Hill took skateboarders and, like, taught them how to act, instead of actors taught them how to skate. I like it when movies aren't afraid to hold back what they are saying.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Again, the rawness, and I think Mid-90s does that really well.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question that we're talking about movies. Was, we were kind of talking about, you've been going to the movies a lot recently. You're, I'm sure, noticing all the different trends, and you were talking about pacing there. So what's one thing that you really look for in movies? Like, oh, this is a good movie or something like that.
I love it when a movie feels real, like genuine. Like I don't like it when
you were saying earlier.
Yeah, well, when a movie doesn't feel like it's trying to be something else. That's like my number one pet. Well, my number one pet peeve is when something's boring. If a movie's boring, it is an unsuccessful movie, in my opinion. So it's like even like, or like when there's nothing there, like when there's no points really being made, and I'm just like, this movie's pointless. Like, whereas like something like Mad Max, I love Mad Max Fury Road. That's like top 5 movies for me. But that's a cool movie because of how it doesn't do like it does so much and so little at the same time. Mm-hmm. But that's a genuine movie. Like, it knows what it is. It doesn't try and BS itself anyway. It gets pretty bad, if I'm being honest. Yeah. It gets pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But it still, like, sticks with its guns and it still does what it wants to do. I love good action, but dramas are actually my favorite.
Yeah.
I really like the new Spider-Man just because of how much drama there was. Like, there's genuine emotion in it.
The Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah. And that was, like, it just felt like... Anyway, that's a whole other can of worms, because everyone loves that movie.
Yeah.
But just getting... I'm such a emotion over logic type of person. Mm-hmm. Like, every time someone's like, there's a plot hole, and I'm like, but it made me feel so good.
But no, I think that's good to know about yourself. Like, you were talking about your own film and kind of like the story you were trying to tell there, but also the visceral visual aspect of it, where it's like, this is about raw feeling and like a visual experience. And I think that's really cool to see in your work.
Yeah,
too.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And actually transitioning now back into your storyboarding and artwork, you were talking about Avatar The Last Airbender already, but you do a lot of action boards, which I think is rare for people doing storyboarding because you have to have a really good amount of technical prowess, which you have. So when did that... Was that just because that was what you were drawn to? Like, you were talking about Mad Max and stuff? Or was that just like you were boarding something that was live action, it already makes you more technical, and you were just kind of on that road, if that makes sense?
I guess my main thing is like... I just always like visualize my ideas in motion, and a lot of those materialize into fight scenes. Like it sounds really weird because I'm not a really violent person, but kind of in my mind, like I'm always having like a fight going on in my head. Like anytime I'm passing someone on the street, I'm like, what would they do if they just like threw a brick wall at me? And I had to like somehow like karate chop out of it or something. And that's always stemmed from like as a kid, like my mom has caught me like hundreds of times just like and she just like will like look at me and not say anything and let the embarrassment just like sink in. So it's
an effective tool.
Yeah. No, but the reason why I do action boards, they just interest me. Like, I get really bored from drawing people talking.
Yeah.
That's it. But ironically, those are my favorite scenes in film. Like, okay, like, I don't know why, but like all my favorite scenes in film have like alcohol in them. And that sounds really bad, but have you seen The Shining?
Yes.
Like the scene when he's at the bar is like the best scene for me because it just is so like that whole like with him coming out with like the second he takes a sip of alcohol, like all of his secrets come out. Mm-hmm. And I just find it, and I was talking to my film friends about it. Shout out to Gene Aversa. I'm doing a lot of shout outs. Shout out! He has a very good podcast called The Waffle Press. If anyone's listening, they should talk about it. They talk about a lot of good movies. If anyone out there is into movies, check it out, Waffle Press.
That's awesome.
I was talking with my film friends about the like the vulnerability involved in alcohol. Like if you're getting drunk with someone, you're essentially like trusting someone. But there's also like a weird type of like people always joke with me. It's like an ASMR thing. Like in that scene, he'll do he'll like swish the alcohol in his mouth and he'll kind of like clink the ice in his glass, and then he'll like gulp swallow the alcohol. And there's something about all those sound effects together. It's just kind of like a it sounds really weird, but like there's something about it that works really well with the acting, and my professor was telling me it's like what Brad Pitt does. Because if you ever notice, look up Brad Pitt eating, because in so many of his scenes he's eating because it helps him act better. I guess if you want to break down alcohol scene is like the scene when like characters like spilling their guts. Casablanca, like I could have been somebody, that whole scene.
Yeah.
The people that walked out of the world, like she had to walk out on me. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's stuff I like in film.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that kind of ties into, too, what we were talking about earlier with the visceral and, like, the feeling.
Right.
More than necessarily, like, oh, because obviously you're drunk. That's not the logical side of you speaking. That's, like, the heart and what's really inside.
Right.
Which I think is interesting to tie it all back together into your work, which is, like, coming from that place inside of you, the spirit elk that is Dash Sharian. Yeah.
You paint me as such a beautiful creature.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had nothing
We
to
have
say
to
to
pay you because we can't see you.
Yeah.
Or photographers.
That's right.
But that's awesome. So, kind of bringing that all back around into looking into what's next for your art and, like, what you want to do with it. What you want to do with film reviews and all this stuff.
I would really love to just at some point make a movie just as like a don't really care how many people see it, but would just love to make a movie that would be like I want to be at a place where I'm comfortable enough to experiment with different art forms. So like hopefully getting to the point where I'm making enough money to where like I'm like, you know what, I want to take 2 years off and make a film. Or I want to take a year off and make a comic. I want to take a year off and do this and do that. Like, just because so many different art forms inspire me. That's just something that I'm really, like, just interested in right now. Right now, just trying to get to the point where I can have a steady career making storyboards and artwork and stuff like that. But as an end goal, like life end goal, this is actually kind of funny. I have kind of like a weird kind of hermit's dream of like owning a movie theater.
Oh, nice.
And like charging like decent price for popcorn. To like $2, here's some popcorn. Yeah. Like totally reasonable. Like there's 7 movies showing and they're all movies I think are good. Yeah. You can come and see them or not.
That sounds like a lag line to a really good movie.
Oh yeah, and I'm old, like I'm 80 and like my grandson is like the only worker there and he just like sweeps or something like that. Like I don't know, I just think that'd be so cute.
And they're all playing on 75mm projection.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and just thinking about that, so like becoming a director, becoming a comic writer, where you're kind of in charge of the story and you know what's being told and how it's told visually. What's that story that you want to tell?
Ooh. There's one that I've always... Well, I have a weird... I don't even know what it would be. Like a comic or like a movie or something. Or like an anime series or something. Or like an animated series. But I have like the story of this kid called Noland. And he like wears this antelope skin. And like the antelope skin is like his father was an antelope, but like when the antelope dies, it like manifests itself into the skin, and then now when like the boy wears it, he like feels finally like in touch with him again. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially like Tarzan meets like more of like a action-y type of comic booky, like super high speed anime style type of fights and stuff like that. But and it's a lot of the main theme in it is like bonds and like friendship are stronger than bonds and blood, because the whole thing is like people from like Nolan's like family coming back, like members of his family are like coming back and becoming like side villains and stuff like that. But then like the people he's met on his journey, like he has to decide are more important to him than one like his blood relatives, because essentially they've been there more than his like blood family has. So that's something that's always interested me just in life and stuff, is these people that you kind of meet and you're like, wow, they're kind of more important to me than like my family. Like not big, I love my family so much, but like there's just every once in a while, like isn't it kind of weird to think like blood wise you and like your second cousin are really well related, but like you and your best friend are like more close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
It's stuff like that. Like not in the like story it's done physically between Nolan deciding to trust his blood brother or like his best friend. Like, so it's done to be more extreme there. But I just, those types of connections of how do people that you meet and then grow a bond with stack against ones that you've had your whole life. Like, it's just kind of, that's always interested me. That whole blood is thicker than water type of thing. But and there's another smaller one. That one would be, I would love to do like a big thing, but I have a shorter story, and it's like a 20-page script that I wrote in my screenwriting class, and it's about an immortal samurai that wants to die. So it's about an immortal samurai, but like he's kind of cursed by this dragon, like to tricked into being like, oh, like if I beat this dragon, I'll win. Like I'll gain some intense strength. But because he beats the dragon, now no one gives him a challenge. So now he's like trying to find this one person that can kill him, as he did with the dragon. So it's kind of this soul crushing kind of. It's pretty dark, but it's kind of a cool. Because I always find, like, because everyone and every villain ever is like, I want to be immortal. And I'm like, that'd be horrible. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to, like, dissect, like, what if, like, the villain got his way, but he was like, So yeah, just kind of, I always try to play with, like, kind of heavier themes and stuff like that.
That's awesome, man. Do you see those as primarily, like, live-action film? Because you're talking about, like, doing animation, not exactly your thing. Doing comic books, there's no money. You've always loved film.
The dream would be like if Nolan was like an animated series similar to Avatar, but I could totally see it as being like a trilogy of live action films too. Would be kind of cool. But I would love to do the samurai one as either a graphic novel or like because the script is physically 22 minutes long. So that's perfect for like a one episode OVA type of a thing. So I was thinking one of those two things would be really cool. But the samurai one is a lot more sound and like Nolan's just so all over the place. And I'm revamping all the character designs right now, but it's just so like that's more of a passion project. Like I realize it will probably never get made, but it's always something. This is why I think it's just so important that artists have a story or a concept they kind of crutch on. Because it's like, when I have nothing to draw, at least I have this. Like, you open up a sketchbook and you're like, well, what do I do? Like, well, what if I did a drawing of this character?
Yeah.
Is always just kind of helps me, like, get back into it. Like, I don't know what your photography is like, but if you're really like mountainscapes and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to do, like, you just kind of go out and be like, I'm just going to drive out to Mount Baldy or something like that. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Probably is completely opposite of what you do, but I hope that served the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, and that's a great segue. Did you have something, Christian?
I was going to say, so if you have any advice for people who want to get into art, who are interested but not sure either where to start or what to do, like what would be your one big piece of advice?
I would say I'm a big fan of falling until you stand. So I would say just drawing and, well, I think that honestly, like, a big thing that set me back that I'd probably be a lot better of an artist now is I fell into that crutch of thinking that reference is cheating. I think everyone kind of goes into that. But because I never used reference, and now that I did use reference and life drawing for like a little bit, now I can draw without reference. So it's kind of a weird thing. But I guess my biggest piece of advice would be to understand structure before you try and fake it. Because, and I get really like annoyed when people like a lot of those people that have really good cartoony styles, their life drawing stuff is great. Like they understand how stuff works. Like they might not be the most fine-tuned drawings, but they understand how anatomy works. Like everything's connected. Like after I took glass blowing, it was life painting. After I took life painting, which essentially I was just every class for like 3 hours was just painting this character. Somehow my storyboarding got better. Like everything's connected. So I would say just try to work with different art styles and trying to work with different mediums and trying to work with different reference and and find an artist that you really like, and then think about how they got to where they are is really important.
Yeah.
Like I really like Mike Mignola. Shout out. And Ian McKegg is a really good storyboard artist. He did the storyboards for like the Star Wars prequels and stuff like that. It was super great. But like Ian McKegg was the one, like all the storyboards I'd seen up to that point were in ink. So I felt this need to ink my storyboards. And then I saw Ian McKegg's and they're just graphite. They look really freaking great, but they're just graphite. So I was just like, whoa, I just never even thought that you could leave something in that state. And kind of running back when you were saying what made me want to get into storyboarding instead of comics is like there's this cleanliness that needs to be implied with comics. Like it has to be really clear. Whereas like for a storyboard, there's like a lot of people like feeling like, oh well, it's just a storyboard. Like it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
So
there's like a freedom in that kind of
and for storyboarding it's so like I wanted to spend 20 minutes on this. Why? Because I wanted to. Like that's how long I wanted to spend on it.
Yeah. And do you think that I don't know where you'd put this in, but you talked about how you love movies that are raw, that are very real, that feel very almost natural. Would you say that is a big part of why you like storyboarding is because it has that kind of sketchy, raw feeling?
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of naturalist feeling.
Yeah, like there's that, like if I love, oh my gosh, I've really gotten into the term rad. If I use the term rad, that means it's good, but kind of like
Buku Red.
Oh yeah, seriously. But like if you've ever seen or read have you seen Taxi Driver, the movie with Robert De Niro? There's this one scene when Robert De Niro shoots at this guy and the guy like tries to block it with it, like instinctively puts up his hand and his hand gets blown away by the bullet blast. And like the storyboard for it is so rad. It's like this just dude that looks mildly inconvenienced that his hand gets blown out, and it's just the best thing ever. And but there's something about him that really makes me like, yeah. Like there's that iconic scene where it's Robert De Niro with like a mohawk, and he's doing like the bloody finger, like it's that iconic scene everyone's seen. That iconic shot, and then the storyboard for it is so funny. Like it's just like
it's just this really dull face.
Yeah, but it's just there's something about it that I'm like, it's doing its job. Like it's doing what needs to be done. I don't know. Yeah. There's just something about it that like Mad Max is like rad, but actually good.
Yeah. I like that. What I was gonna say about that was I think that's cool to see throughout all of your work is kind of like it's about the feeling, not about the exact thing. You know, like your own film, what you're saying about storyboarding. Yeah. I think that's really cool. And I think it's also really cool, too, that you get that through knowing the structure, knowing how to do it the perfect and correct way, which I mean, just looking at the time this podcast is being recorded, even just the last 3 like cafe sketches that you posted, the likeness is very spot on and very representational.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yet it's drawn quickly and with a feeling. Like it has that. Just like your action storyboards, it's like that person is in movement, even though it's a still drawing.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think what you're saying about all of that is really cool, that you've had this artistic upbringing that's really brought you to a place to be able to express feeling. Yeah. And I think that's really awesome, and so I'm so glad that you've been able to talk about that and storytelling with us.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, because of that, and I just mentioned your Instagram.
Oh, yeah?
I was going to do a somewhat cheesy transition.
Yeah. Sorry, I talked too much. Where can people go to check out your work?
Oh, dang. And then they just hear like a door slam.
And you hear him like running away down the street. Like,
no. I'm at Art Dashes on Instagram, so that's ARTDASHES on Instagram. But that's the main place to find me. Please give me a follow if you think it's interesting. And then always shout out if you want to talk. I'm very I always get a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, that makes me sound really cool. I get a couple people always asking over my DMs and stuff like that, and I'm totally open. Like if people want to ask questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And I hope people do, because your work is really great. And that's the unfortunate thing about an audio-only podcast is people can't see it right now. But we're in the dark anyway, so it doesn't matter. So
I can hear that beard.
Yes, I can hear the beard. I can hear the amazing art. But really, I can hear the heartbeat of a storyteller who is communicating visually, sequentially in storyboards, but also online through even your El Capoy cinemas.
Oh, thank you so
communicating
much.
your ideas. It's awesome, man.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
See you next time.